Overdrive, hour number 3. Jim Tatti, Frankie Corrado, and Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star. Just doing an Olympic sort of re-summing up things. Summer McIntosh wins the 200-meter butterfly for the her second Olympic golds, what I'm trying to say. And first Canadian to win separate golds in a set of Olympics since Donovan Bailey in 1996. Also, Felix Auger-Aliassime got through in men's singles and will play in the semifinals in mixed doubles with Gabby Dabrowski. Lost, but will play for a bronze medal. Canadian basketball women still alive, even though they lost to Australia this morning because France got by Nigeria. So it battles or comes down to a Team Canada-Nigeria battle on Sunday morning. And who else do we have? Corey Connors in the mix after the opening round of the Paris golf tournament at the Olympics. He fired a 368, and he sits tied for 14th after the opening round. So
there we go.
Tons going on as the Olympics really pretty well is at the halfway point, right?
Are we there already? Yeah, I guess we are.
Sure, because it ends a week Sunday. Yeah. So and started last Wednesday. So just maybe close to the halfway point.
And good for Corey Connors because it's been a busy stretch for him. Like he was in Europe. He played the Scottish Open, played the Open, flew back to Canada, and then flew back overseas. And like the course they're playing at is not exactly like a course he's very familiar with. And we had him on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he said that he was playing that course in his simulator at home to get the feel of it. So for him to go over there, and he's had such a consistent season already so far. Striking the ball, putting has been really good. So nice to see Corey Connors getting off to a good start.
It really is. Hideki Matsuyama, I mean, he's running away with it already. -8 today, 63. 2 strokes ahead of Xander Schauffele, who may well be the player of the year on the PGA Tour. As much as we thought it was going to be Scotty Scheffler. So this is going to be a tough tournament to win. But you're right. Connors right now, you look at tee to green, he's in the top handful of guys.
Yeah.
Like, nobody hits it better. Or if they hit it better, it's only – now maybe nobody hits it better than Scheffler. And Schauffele's
no, he
right
hits
up there.
like he's very consistent, and Nick Taylor has been very consistent as well when it comes to tee to green. It was his putting, like a lot of people at the Open. Putting was very difficult there over the course of that weekend.
Yeah, slower greens, tough adjustment.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we're going to talk CFL. There's a documentary out called Running Back Relentless. Andrew Harris is the subject of this, and Andrew Harris is with us now. Andrew, welcome. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
Good to see you. In terms of putting this documentary together, what led to it, and what does it mean to you?
Well, yeah, it was an 18-month process of having a camera follow you around, and a lot of B-roll and footage from childhood and growing up. And initially, when Taylor brought this idea to me from Upper Canada Films to do the documentary, I was kind of reluctant. I mean, I was what about my story is going to impact and help and maybe change someone's outlook on where they're at and give them a little and shed some light on their situation. But it was more so of a positive, uplifting thing, and it is a football. It's a story about a football player, but it's not really a football documentary. I think this is going to be relatable to a lot of other people, in a lot of different walks of life. It's a story about resilience. It's a story about trauma, about pain, about isolation, and really, how you can still achieve great things even though you're in dark places and you get to that breaking point where it gets scary for you.
At what point did it feel normal that you had cameras following you around shooting this documentary, or did it ever feel normal? Like, did you ever get used to it?
No, not really. I mean, it helped that it was, guys that I knew. So, I mean, a lot of times we were just, hanging out, it felt like, but still a little bit awkward and, just trying to, you're used to it while playing and then the media. But when it's more personal information and more personal stories and more personal storytelling, that's when it really kind of got tough for me. Because I knew, I'm like, once I say this, it's like, okay, I got it out there, and now, what are we going to do with this information, and how are we going to put it out there? So that was a tough part. And even too, after many cuts of going back and forth, and saying, okay, what is the messaging here, and how do we want to portray this and put this out there? And I think we did it in the most raw and honest, vulnerable way possible. And I think again, it's gonna affect a lot of people in a positive way.
Andrew, we've seen a lot of these documentary style productions in sports these days. They've, the Drive to Survive has been a big thing in Formula One. The PGA Tour, tennis has gotten on board. Obviously, the Netflix receiver and quarterback series. But this one gets a lot more vulnerable, I would say, than a lot of those do. I mean, what's been the reaction like? I know you talk about some difficult topics, including, mental health and depression, and also a difficult childhood that you endured as a younger person. What's been the kind of effect of having this out there on your family life?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, from a personal point, it's been very therapeutic. Going through, as a male athlete, for sure, we wear masks and we have this, this tough bravado, attitude that, we can't be affected, we can't show weakness. But I mean, at the end of the day, no matter where, everyone has a story, right? Everyone's come from something. Everyone's been through things, and some people maybe more than others. But as you go through your career, as you go through life, as you have a family, you get cut, you get traded, you go through injury, you go through divorce, whatever it may be. These things start to stack up on you, and you get to that breaking point where, again, it can be very dangerous. But for myself, ripping off the mask, so to speak, and just being open and honest, I think it'll help players and other people in different walks of life kind of look at themselves and say, wow, I can relate to some of these things, and I can relate to some of these feelings. And maybe it's time for me to talk to someone. Maybe it's time for me to let some of these things off my chest and deal with them. And honestly, going through this process, like I said, it has been very therapeutic. The amount of outreach I've had from not only athletes, but again, people from all different walks of life, saying how they can relate to it, how similar their story was, how they've had similar feelings, and really just shine the light on, where they're at, where they're going, and maybe how to deal with it in a better way.
You mentioned Taylor, so that's Taylor Prestage who put this together. And I just want to circle back to what you just said, because there's a process here. You're saying something, you're messaging something for the first time, and maybe that's a little awkward, but as you go through this whole process, you would actually gain confidence in doing that. So what kind of a change did all that process have for you as you are here now? I mean, maybe you feel more comfortable sort of helping or mentoring people now that you're able to express it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no psychology major or a doctor, but I can definitely talk to people about situations a lot easier now, and people are more open to being open about their situation. So that to me is a win. Helping people help people, and really just shining a light on it's okay to hurt, it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to express yourself. And again, I was never a person to be overly emotional, overly communicator with issues and how I was feeling. And this again, like I said, opened my eyes and many others to being able to express yourself in a negative way to kind of get back to a positive situation.
And can you go back to maybe the first time you were able to sort of express something that you'd kept inside before, and how that made you feel?
Yeah, man, I remember being in 2019 and kind of just going through some adversity throughout the season, and finally going to see a sports psychologist. And honestly, I sat down with her and literally just cried for 2 sessions and just let it off my chest. And honestly, letting that anger, that fear, that resentment out, it really turned my play into becoming an absolute animal. I mean, in the Great Cup of 2019, is the proof's all there. But I mean, I think every athlete, every person has a certain trigger, and a certain motivating factor, and sometimes that comes from a negative place, and sometimes it's something else. But again, we need to be able to channel these things in the right direction and the right way, because again, there's always going to be a breaking point at some point that's going to get you down this rabbit hole of negativity, and that's what happened to me. And I mean, like I said, everyone's got a different story. So again, my whole goal with this was to share my story and open people's eyes of maybe some of the things they're going through, and help them, not only become better athletes, but better fathers, better friends, and better leaders in their community.
Was it ever hard for you? Like, you just finished your career, and now you must look back on things, and I'm sure you wonder, it could have been easier, things could have been a different way. Do you ever look back on it and hope things went differently, or do you kind of look at things and say, this kind of made me who I am now, and now I have such a strong story to share to people?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're in it, you kind of say, "Oh, why me? Why me?" But God puts us in positions to go through things, and there's that fight or flight mentality with a lot of situations. I've always been a fighter, and I was put in these situations to keep on fighting. And maybe, and honestly, I'm very proud of what I did on the field. But this project, this film, telling my story is ultimately, I'm more proud of this than anything, because I think honestly this will be able to impact a lot of people in a lot of ways. And again, just from an athletic standpoint, this is not usual for us to be open like this. And I think shedding some light on these issues, there's definitely more conversation around it now. But I think especially from a male athlete standpoint, we need to find that hurt and that pain in ourselves to really get past things and be able to be our best fathers, leaders, and players on the field. And a lot of times when guys are going through things, media or coaches, they're quick to jump on the guy and say, oh, he's this, he's that. But there's always more to someone deep down inside, and I think we need to dive a little deeper into that. And as friends, as teammates, as colleagues, just lend an ear sometimes to a guy and say, how are you really doing? Will go a long way.
Is there a way to do that, Andrew? I mean, it's such a cutthroat business, football maybe more than any other sport, because you can be literally cut at any moment. I mean, is there a practical way you could see that actually happening, where guys would be able to be more open and vulnerable in a sport where you're supposed to be so tough?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the awareness that it's there. I think everyone just puts this, everyone just kind of puts it under the rug and tries to hide from it. But I think the more that we just kind of talk about it and realize that it's there, and it affects people. I look at someone that's playing a quarterback position, and there's so much attention to detail, and from reading a defense to understanding scheme. And if that guy's having a bad day, and goes off and doesn't play very well, everyone's going to have all these other excuses or reasons why. But you don't understand how much pressure goes into that, and what someone might be dealing with. So again, I think there's just needs to be more conversation about this for guys to actually go out and seek help and talk to a sports psychologist. And that's the number one place I would start, because it's confidential. They can't use any of the things that you guys say in those meetings against you. But that's a great start, to go and kind of figure out what the root is, that's kind of holding you back. Or maybe it's just an issue that came up. Maybe it's a family thing, no matter what it is. But I think the sports psychologist realm is or a team therapist, again, because it is confidential, and that's the biggest issue with guys, is they're worried that their issues, their problems are going to come out to light. But at the end of the day, burying it deep down inside is only making the matters worse. I promise you that.
So let's go back a number of years, and you're on the top of your game. Does that sort of get in the way of what you're doing here? Like, does it make it too difficult to actually open up, because you're achieving, you have this persona, and nobody really sees what goes on inside you?
Yeah, man. Everyone just wants to see results on game day. They want to see you show up to practice, and deal with your injuries and everything else from the surface level. But no one wants to really talk about what's going on underneath. And a lot of times there isn't things going on, but there's throughout a season, a starting player will go through a number of different injuries, a number of different things throughout, just ups and downs throughout a grade level, a stats level, and these emotions. And then there's also, the things that, you're dealing with from your past. So, I mean, everyone wants to see you on top, and they don't really care about what's going on underneath. And when that does happen, they're quick to just make, their assumptions, and be done with you. So, that's just the game. That's what it is. We love sports, but at the end of the day, athletes are still human, and we have pasts, we have futures, and we have lives that we still have to live outside of being an athlete.
Well, you delivered, and you delivered in the CFL for quite a long time, and you'll go down as one of the best running backs in CFL history. And, I know you've signed a one-day contract with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to retire there as a member of that organization. Maybe just speak a little bit about what that organization and what that city means to you and your story.
Yeah, I mean, playing for Winnipeg from 2016 to 2021 was a dream come true. I grew up watching the Bombers. Went there, and the team wasn't even really a playoff contender. And got us to the point where we're the powerhouse of the CFL and two back-to-back Grey Cups, and then the split between me leaving to go to Toronto wasn't pretty, and I had a lot of resentment towards them based off a lot of things I was kind of going through, and I talk about during the film of just where I was at. But at the end of the day, I mean, I came to Toronto, got to beat them in the Grey Cup in 2022, and then ended my career. But I felt like my impact was the biggest in Winnipeg. My impact on the fan base and the fact that it was my hometown as well too, made it just that much sweeter for me to want to go and hang it up with them. Great reception from the crowd, and just realizing how much of an impact you really had on a community, a fan base, and an organization. So I mean, Winnipeg's home still, but it definitely just felt like the right place for me.
Andrew, the film talks about, all the internal struggles that you lay bare for people to listen to. There's also external struggles, the injury struggles that you went through, trying to stay healthy in such a bruising position. I'm wondering how's the body holding up after 15 years in the CFL now that you're away from it a little while?
Yeah, it feels great to not be limping down the stairs after a game. I tell you that much. But yeah, I'm feeling good actually. So good that I'm actually playing some senior A hockey coming up in the fall here in Tilsonburg. So
wow.
I moved out to London in February, and I skated with them last when they were in the playoffs, and just in March here. So they just won the championship for the division. So skated with them. They said I was good enough to kick it with them. So I'm gonna be playing with the Tilsonburg Thunder in October here. So I'm excited for that.
What position?
So I play forward. I usually play center, but there's some ex pros there, so I'll probably just the guy who flies up and down the wing and throws the body around, and probably a third line grinder. So we'll see. I'm just excited to get to throw the body around, and my hockey career at a competitive level stopped. I was 16 years old. It just was too expensive and ridiculous for my mom at the time. So I've stuck with football. So I've always had that itch to get back to hockey. So this is going to be it's gonna be great for the mind, body, and soul to keep competing at a high level at hockey. And I don't golf or anything like that, so this will be my outlet.
So, I mean, you're on a real journey here. So now that you've unlocked a lot of these things and put them out there and gone through the process and gained confidence that way, where does this go for you?
For me, it's funny. After doing this documentary, I'm doing a lot more, public speaking engagements and going to certain communities, teams, and just doing more one-on-one, intimate kind of, Q&As and helping spread, and shed light on issues that, are prevalent in a lot of youth. So for me, just continue this message and, sharing my stories, my successes, my ups, my downs. And, when I came to the CFL, I always said, I want to make an impact on this team. And I was with the BC Lions. I just want to make an impact no matter what it was. They had me at safety, they had me at receiver, and ended up, being in my natural position at running back. But, so I think just in life now, it's just to continue to make an impact in people's lives, to keep giving back, and I just became the president of my old junior team in Nanaimo. So, I'm trying to influence and give those kids the same experience and memories that I had. We had a brotherhood out there. We won 3 national championships. We had guys from all over Canada, and just trying to recreate that for that generation and this new generation coming up. And for us, just building that program back up and getting it back to greatness, and just keep paying it forward. I mean, I would not be here where I'm standing without the community and people that helped me along the way. So for me, it's just paying that back and paying it forward, and just trying to make an impact in people's lives as we go.
What was it like getting back on the ice more regularly? Like you quit hockey, you pursue a career in football. I can't imagine you skated much, or maybe you did. Like how's the transition back to hockey been?
Yeah, so my last 5 years or so, the body was taking a beating just working out as hard as I used to. So I honestly played probably 4 or 5 times a week, just beer league and ice times back in Winnipeg. And wasn't really working out in the gym as much. So lots of ice hockey, a great cross trainer, and works different muscles. So, but yeah, now I'm doing a little more isolated workouts with Jason Williams actually out here in London. But yeah, I'm getting ready for this season, and I just can't be rusty. I can't look like a bum out there, So I gotta make sure I'm on my P's and Q's, and hopefully I can crack the top 6.
Well, the guy you did the documentary with, Taylor Prestige, he's a goalie. Like, do you light him up? You guys get on the ice together and you kind of show him up a little bit?
Ask him for some of the bloopers or the raw footage from when we went on the ice and we were working one-timers.
His whole career highlight reel would be bloopers.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be a highlight for sure. But I think he might have been letting me score just for good film. Who knows? That's probably what he's going to say.
Well, look, you've got a platform here. Do you want to tell people how they can get a hold of you if they want you to speak to them?
Yeah, for sure. You can check out 33film.ca. That will give you the access to all the platforms where it's being streamed. You can reach me at Andrew Harris 33 on Instagram. DM me. Tell me about your story. I'm here to listen, here to help in any way possible. But yeah, those 2 outlets online, 33film.ca, or you can catch me on Instagram at Andrew Harris 33.
Andrew, thanks very much. Nice to see you and talk to you.
All right, thanks for the time today, guys. Take care.
You too. Andrew Harris, former CFL star, and this is something really that's we need more of, to be able to talk about things, to be able to deal with things, as opposed to keeping everything a secret.
Yeah.
I mean, the conversation opens the door.
It's so easy for guys to just say, not interested in that, not going to go down that path. For him to put himself in a position where you are vulnerable and you're sharing stories about things that you probably didn't want to talk about very much when you were growing up or playing, it takes a lot of courage. So shout out to him. And he was an unbelievable player as well. Like supremely talented player. So to be dealing with everything that he dealt with and still have those results, speaks to his kind of mental fortitude.
Well, it goes to show, the headline, 2019 Grey Cup, he's the MVP, and you think, wow, what a player. You don't know the story of him having this breakthrough with a psychologist that leads to it, right?
Right.
I mean, that's pretty incredible stuff, right? And it does go to show, there's so much more to unlocking your potential as an athlete than just getting in the gym and doing what the coach asks you to do. There's this whole other aspect of reaching your potential that he's kind of laying out here, which is if you've got all this rage and frustration bottled up inside you, you're never going to be the player you can be. You can never be the person you can be. I think what he's doing here is really important, is to say to young people, to any people of any age, really, there's something to be gained from laying yourself bare a little bit.
I've said many times, and we're all guilty of this, we deal with the performance and, the wins, the losses, and the money and all that. But anything that brings the humanity back to the equation, I'm all for, because I think we just missed that so many times.
And how about he's playing hockey now?
Yeah.
He's retired from football, and he's playing hockey.
You want to get in front of that guy streaking down the wall?
I do not want that guy forechecking on me.
Oh, my God.
I couldn't even imagine.
I think that'd be a good video. I think we should set that up.
Yeah, you want to set that up?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I haven't skated since last December. That would not be good for
Frankie,
me.
how do you think you do in Senior A hockey out in Tolsenburg?
I'm not sure, but I don't think I'm cut out for it.
Come on.
I don't think I'm cut out for that.
That's another story.
I think that's a little too gritty for me.
That's a cop-out, Frankie. You could handle those guys.
That's big video. I think people would love to see that.
I'll stick to the non-contact alumni games.
That does sound gritty, though.
But doesn't contact ever seep into the non-contact alumni game?
Not with me, Jimmy.
Oh, really?
I don't go anywhere near it anymore.
But there's some on the ice, right?
If there is, it's accidental.
That's a good way to put it.
Accidentally on purpose.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't.
Well, okay, let me ask you, when we play these alumni games, you want to be the one that hits Rick Vive when he's not wearing a bucket, or you want to be the one that hits Wendell?
Oh, no.
No, exactly.
No.
So,
Hitting Wendell, what a mistake.
Wendell's still rock solid.
yeah. Wendell will drop a shoulder into you, no problem.
Oh, sorry, guy. You okay? Too bad.
You know what? If Wendell dropped a shoulder into you, I feel like the guys that we play against would be thrilled with that. Just to tell the story, just to go like drinking with their buddies and say, yeah, you should have seen Wendell put me on my keister.
Yeah. And they tell it just like that as opposed to altering the story.
Yes, guy.
Yeah, there's a badge of honor there.
I mean, that is like Andrew Harris. He's just removed from playing professional football.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lethal weapon.
No kidding.
I mean,
no kidding.
I don't care that he hasn't played since he was 16.
Yeah.
Like, I ain't getting it. Like, I don't think anybody should be on the ice with that guy.
No.
Like, that sounds scary.
When he said third line checker,
I don't think so.
I'm like, oh man, that team. Let's just say that team's got a good chance at winning.
I like their chances.
Yeah, I like their chances. As long as Taylor Prestige is not in net, they have a good chance.
You know,
at winning.
Taylor.
I
mean,
he's a
you
buddy
scored
of
a few
mine.
on Taylor.
You burned him.
Shots here.
You burned him.
How does the?
I don't know. I got to get a phone.
Yeah, we're going into a break so you can deal with the riffraff.
Yeah.
Coming up next, going to talk Major League Baseball with Kiley McDaniel out of ESPN, and that we'll do that on the other side of this. Overdrive continues on TSN2, TSN 1050, the iHeartRadio app, and streaming online. Overdrive, Jim Tatti, Frank Corrado, and Dave Feschuk today. Going back to Major League Baseball, Jay's idle and spending the weekend in New York against the Yankees. To that end, let's bring in Kiley McDaniel, the ESPN baseball insider. Kiley, welcome. How are you today, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. It's been a pretty busy last couple of weeks for me.
Absolutely. So let's talk about right off the top, before we dive into the Jays, Mike Trout, another torn meniscus. And, really, instead the guy in Toronto, a wasted performance, with this guy in Anaheim with the Angels and out for the season again. What's your take on that?
I mean, it's tough for baseball. There was that stretch there where he was obviously the best player in the game for, 6, 7, 8 years, where he looked to be like, his career could end at 30 and he would still be in the Hall of Fame. And I think that's all still true. I think on the bright side for baseball, we've had guys like Ellie De La Cruz and Aaron Judge and other players sort of emerge in his wake. So I think he, obviously was a fantastic player. It kind of looks like those days may be behind us, or he's just a very good player here and there with some injury issues, which is, like I said, a shame, but he's a Hall of Famer either way. So tip my cap to him and hope there's a couple more good years in there.
Like, where does he go from here? Like, what's the next step for Mike Trout? He obviously can't stay healthy. The Angels are not going to be a good team in the foreseeable future. Like, I don't know. Like, where does Mike Trout go from here?
I mean, the buzz for a while is because he's sort of local, is that they would swap bad contracts with the Phillies and he would go over there and, probably DH and, sort of try to tiptoe around the things that might cause him to get injured again and get the most that you can out of him. That would be a great outcome if he could stay reasonably healthy, give you, 115 games, something like that. In sort of a part-time DH role, doesn't really play the field very much and can be an above-average player. Like, I think he could do that. I think that would probably be good for everyone, but that includes him, Artie Moreno, the Phillies, Nick Castellanos' contract. Like, all that stuff has to work out. And I'm sure there's a couple teams that would do that, but that's the team that's been rumored the most.
So, Kiley, looking at the Blue Jays here, there's mixed reviews about the way they conducted themselves at the deadline, but we're starting to see it already. Last night in the lineup for the Blue Jays is Joey Loperfido, one of the assets they acquired in the Yusei Kikuchi trade, which has been widely heralded as one of the best ones of the deadline. What did you make of the Jays deadline in general? And let's talk about Loperfido to start here. What do they have in this young man, 25 years old and big league ready from the jump?
Yeah, he's an exciting guy because I saw him at Duke when he was, I think, 21, if not 22, and he was just another guy that seemed to have some tools and some swing and miss, and you're just like, that's a good athlete, a little bit of upside. I'm sure he'll get drafted and play pro ball, but I'm not sure what's there. And then, as Houston has done with a number of guys, it just immediately clicked in pro ball. And I think this year especially, I think scouts realized when he was doing it in AA and AAA, you're like, this guy, it's going to work. And so guys like this, he's a plus runner with plus power. Can play center field if you need him to. Is probably more of a left fielder, but there's some swing and miss inherent, but also has a decent approach. So, that is not quite to the extreme, but that's a Joey Gallo kind of player. Really good athlete with some swing and miss, but he'll draw some walks, so it might be frustrating at times to watch. Sometimes this kind of guy turns into Sam Hilliard. You're probably thinking, who is that? That's the point. Sometimes it turns into Joey Gallo, or last year James Outman was a 4-win player. This year he wasn't very good. It's a sort of boomer bust kind of profile, and the fact that he's the second guy in the trade, I think Jake Bloss is sort of the headliner there. I would say Derek Fisher, another former Jay, is another guy sort of like that with the plus speed and the plus power, but you're not quite positive how much it's all going to play in the game. There's a bunch of guys like that. Most of them end up being sort of fourth outfielders, platoon guys, nice players, because they're relying on their athleticism. So once they get to age 26, 27, and the bat speed or the foot speed backs up, then they turn into sort of fringe big leaguers. Obviously, this could go a bunch of different ways, but I already rattled off like 6 dudes that are this kind of guy, and most of them aren't that great, but he has gone to the big leagues and done pretty well, and we're sort of just finding out what he is.
Yeah, so I guess if you put the 14 guys they got into a class and called the class of 2024, how would you rate that class of those 14 guys? Is from top to bottom, is this a good collection of prospects? Does it just fill a void in a depleted system? Where do you have it?
Yeah, the system was bottom third. I think it still is, because the way that I sort of grade farm systems is if you don't have a guy in the top half of the top 100, it's really hard for 1 or 2 players to move the system very much. And for the Jays, I would say Bloss is probably the third best prospect right now behind Tiedemann, although he could be passing Tiedemann soon with the Tommy John, and Orelvis Martinez, who obviously is not available at the moment. Those 2 guys, I would imagine, Martinez will be graduating next year. Bloss may graduate this year. So while it has propped it up a bit, it's still going to be in the bottom third. And the guys that were added, especially after Bloss and Loperfido, were, sort of solid depth pieces. I would say the one to keep an eye on would be McAdoo, Charles McAdoo, the second baseman from Pittsburgh. Was I believe, 15th rounder out of San Jose State last year. Was one of those guys that I knew his name and knew he could hit a little bit. Didn't really know that much about him. He's had a huge season. Has gotten all the way to Double-A in his first full pro season. Looks like he could be a power over-hit guy that is capable at a couple different positions. Again, maybe that's Kevin Biggio. Maybe that's a little bit better. Is in that general area of, this is probably a useful big leaguer, which in the 15th round, it's usually multiple years before you see a 15th rounder turn into a good big leaguer. So he's a nice find in that trade. But I think Loperfido and Bloss will be the 2 guys that will sort of define this group of players, both because they're both big league quality right now, and they were the 2 headliners in the biggest trade, and they are seen as the prizes of, like you said, one of the 3 or 4 sort of big overpays of the deadline. So that's a nice, feather in Ross Atkins' cap.
So now that the trade deadline has come and gone, everyone knew exactly what had to happen around this team. You had to move all the expiring contracts and recoup some assets, some minor league players, and plan for the future. Is it clear to you what the next order of business is for the Jays?
It would be picking a direction. The sort of buzz going into the trade deadline, as everyone sort of recognized that Toronto could be one of the big sellers, was that there wasn't going to be wholesale changes or a tear down or anything like that. That ownership sort of sees this as a team where there's a lot of resources. Payroll's pretty high. You've got some potential star players and Gausman and Guerrero and Bichette. And so this is we're going to reload for next year. You notice Chris Bassett, some of the guys that had an additional year of control didn't become available, because I think that was sort of the plan is, all right, the guys that aren't going to be here next year or will be free agents, let's go ahead and ship those guys out and get something for them, and then we'll regroup. And so there's a decision as to how hard are they going to try to compete next year, who's going to be in charge of the team. Are there going to be wholesale changes? Is there going to be an extension for Guerrero or Bichette? Are those bigger picture? Because if you could move one of those guys and get 3 or 4 guys at that Bloss Loperfido level, and then you're also cutting money, that's something you would consider. If you're saying, I want to upgrade the team to become a contender, but we don't have enough money, that would be one way to attack that. Not recommending that's a good idea, but that would be one thing you can do in the offseason when you kind of have a blank slate. You can do whatever you want. Looking at where they are right now, it seems like there's a couple hitters, a couple pitchers, maybe 4 or 5 players. If you can use what is available, the, say, $50-60 million that's come off the payroll, spend that. I would imagine there has to be a trade mixed in there, but if you pay sort of full freight, $15-20 million for 2 or 3 of those guys, can maybe trade for a couple more, or maybe somebody on a minor league deal breaks through and turns into a core player, which would be lucky, but every now and then that happens. There's a path to this happening. I wouldn't say it's likely, but it's possible. So I would imagine it will be some version of that. Let's figure out if we can regroup and be the team we thought we were going to be this year, next year, without massive changes. and then sort of make the big picture, Bichette, Guerrero, Gaussman, all those sorts of decisions at the end of next year, hopefully with a winning season, contending, that sort of stuff happening. I think at that point, you can probably pass judgment on how this whole regime has done if at the end of next year, you don't have a better answer than you have right now.
So the team they thought they'd be this year, Kiley, a lot of people in town didn't think they'd be that because they spent all of last offseason sort of, not doing much and not really improving an offense that a lot of people saw as needing improvement. Do you believe that, you talked about how they could, with the right moves, maybe get back to being a contender, but you're saying it's not likely. Like, how much of a Hail Mary is it? And do you see another alternative? Like, if it's you running the show, you're not under the constraints of ownership, and you don't have to worry about putting bums in seats. Like, what's the best baseball move here if you are trying to get this team back to something more respectable than what it is?
Well, I would even take a step back further from that, which is if you look at the best teams in baseball, and you guys can play along with me here, if you look at like Tampa, you're like, all right, these guys get a bunch of young players. They are really good at developing players that you've never heard of turning into good big leaguers. What do the Yankees do, or the Dodgers? They have a pretty good farm system. They'll find a star out of their farm system every year or two, and then they'll throw a bunch of like big free agent signings on top of it. The teams that succeed, and if you go deeper into the draft, the Yankees draft a certain kind of guy, the Dodgers draft a certain kind of guy. Every year in every draft that they have, there's one or two guys you don't think will be good that are good. If you look at the Blue Jays, what are they good at? What is the thing that they do? What is their point of view? Are they really good at developing a certain kind of guy? Do they constantly trade for that kind of guy, sign that kind of free agent? Like San Francisco, they've had some problems, but they can turn 1 to 2 year flyer starting pitcher free agents into real players. They've done it with Gaussman. They did it with Rodon. They've done it with DeSclafani. There's been versions of this guy that have happened. How would you guys define what Toronto's sort of big picture? These are our core competencies. This is what we're good at. This is what we're trying to do. It might work, might not work. In San Francisco, they have a thing they're good at, but it hasn't quite worked yet. Do you guys feel like that exists for the Jays, that they have the thing that they do, that they just need to do it enough times and it'll eventually work?
No,
not at all.
No.
I would say that's the first thing you have to do. And I think to most people, they would say, well, that's a top-down thing. You need someone else in charge. It could be you don't need someone new in charge. You need a new player development department or a new scouting department or a new big league coaching staff. Like, you could sort of blame it on the second and third tier people, but that's the problem. Winning teams have it sounds kind of rote to be like, oh, we run the football here. We're a hard-nosed team, or, we build it from the back to the front with the bullpen or whatever. You could say whatever you want. The reality is they don't have that. And so they need to have that, because the problem is, I would say player development is an area where they don't really excel. They don't have those random guys in the draft turning into real players at the big league level. There's, been a couple, but it doesn't happen at the rate it needs to. And then you see the 2-star hitters are both having bad seasons at the same time. That seems like that has something to do with player development at the big league level, which is not how people always think about it. But you see, like, the Braves bring Spencer Strider and Michael Harris up as sort of no-name prospects, and they both immediately succeed. Like, there's something going right there. There are teams like St. Louis and San Francisco that do this all the time across multiple GMs because they have continuity in player development. I would argue that's the thing that needs to be solved. Talking about if the payroll should go up 10%, like, that doesn't solve anything. That's just sort of, throwing paint on a problem, or lipstick on a pig, or, whatever colorful phrase you want to throw on it.
I talked to somebody earlier in the year, and it was kind of pointed, with when Bichette and Vladdy were both struggling based on the inactivity in the offseason. It's almost like they were setting those guys up for failure. That's pretty harsh. But I guess the question that comes out of it, because you heard, Kiley, what we had to say, what is the perception of what the Jays are doing with people you talk to?
It's that they're in that, like, meaty middle of the league where, like, they have some things going for them. Like, they have some star players. They, have a couple good prospects. They have some money. They're in a big market. They got a good fan base. And they have people that are sort of respected. I would say the Shapiro tree is seen as a successful one. You look at what Cleveland's doing and what Minnesota's doing with guys from that tree. And obviously Shapiro himself is in Toronto. And then you look at the players and you're just like, oh, like, the performance isn't quite there. The farm system's just okay. The big league team is not overachieving. They don't have, like, an identity when it comes to free agency. And I would argue that, half the league is probably some version of that, where they have a couple things going for them and a couple things not going for them. I would argue Pittsburgh was in that group. And then this year, all of a sudden, they had Jared Jones and Paul Skeens and O'Neal Cruz and Mitch Keller and all these guys kind of clicked at the same time, and they went from, they have two good players and not a lot of money and not a lot of direction, and now it's like, it's a pitching organization. And I'm not sure if that's real or if they just had a couple things happen at the same time and then they did the smart thing and drafted Paul Skeens at a pick that not everyone has access to. I don't know if that's reality, but if that's sort of how they're perceived the next couple years going forward, then they will be a team with an identity and a thing that they do. And Toronto's seen as one of those teams that doesn't have it. And I would argue Seattle didn't have it for, 4 or 5 years ago, they didn't have it. And then they went through a mini rebuild, and now they have a thing in the draft that they do well. Teams are taking their executives away. They have a thing in free agency that they're doing well. They've built like a successful team, and they haven't like made the ALCS or won the World Series, but they have an identity and a direction and seem to be going up. And the Blue Jays are seen as sort of plateauing or stagnant. They haven't really broken through to that next level yet.
I guess if you look at the AL East, a team that has an identity would be the Rays. Like, we know what they are. They draft well, they develop well, and they sold off assets just like the Jays did. How worried would you be if you're the Jays that the Tampa Bay Rays are going to beat you back up the ladder?
With like a third of the money. Yeah, there's a reason that I think it's like a third of the GMs in baseball have some connection to either working with the Rays or working with the guys that left from the Rays. It's because that's seen as like the model. Like, Miami's owner seems like he doesn't want to spend any money, but wants a good team. And so he just said, all right, who's the highest ranking Rays guy I can take? And that's who he got to be his GM. And they went and sold off the whole team, which is a version of what, Jeff Lunau did in Houston. And then his lieutenant, Mike Elias, is now in Baltimore and is like a model franchise. Came from, I would say, a pretty toxic work environment, but with some good ideas in Houston. And now has gotten rid of the toxic part and has all the good ideas and added some of his own. And he's found an answer. And I think the original thought was that the Shapiro tree would be the one to go from. And it turns out that taking Michael Elias from the Houston tree and David Stearns, who was also in that same front office in Houston, and then the guys from the Tampa tree, which obviously Chaim Bloom didn't work out, but Matt Arnold is. Peter Bendix, I think, had a good deadline. Obviously, Andrew Friedman's doing well. I think they might have just picked from the wrong tree or maybe picked the wrong guy because he's had enough runway to sort of show what he wants to do, and it hasn't come together. And a lot of guys don't get this much time and this much payroll. Like, some guys get a couple years in Pittsburgh and all of a sudden they don't have results and they get fired. And he's had a lot more than that. So, at some point you can see where people come back to, do we need a different guy in charge? Because when you take this sort of 30,000 foot view, it just seems like, well, maybe let's just try something else just to shake things up and sort of see what that does. Because it seems like this team should be competing every year when they have sort of more resources and more built-in advantages than Tampa, and Tampa just keeps beating them.
Yes, guy to that. Kiley, thanks very much.
Hopefully I don't get in trouble for this one.
No, you're safe. You're safe here. Kiley McDaniel, ESPN baseball insider. And the key phrase is for a third of the money.
Right. Did he get in trouble for the last one?
I have no idea.
I don't know. We'll have to ask Doogie.
Not my concern.
We'll find out from
I'm only
Doogie.
here one more day. Not my concern.
He's only speaking truth. How bad can it be?
Yeah, that's right. Overdrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. FanDuel best bets are next on Overdrive on TSN2, TSN 1050, the iHeartRadio app, and streaming online. Oh, yeah. Sounds like a dentist drill that's come unhinged. Big discussion here about how to end the show, and it didn't go well. But anyway, today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Doogie, what do we have?
Well, speaking of not going well, that's kind of been the premise of these best bets throughout the week. Like as Frankie and I were talking about, you have to be real with them. You have to be real and own up to your best bets. But we're going to get a bounce back today, guys. Let's go.
We'll see.
The NFL preseason, technically here, the Pro Hall of Fame game. The Chicago Bears, Houston Texans tonight. Going to go with the under 16.5 in the first half. This seems like a very run-heavy type of game. Caleb Williams will not be in this matchup, even though he wanted to play. C.J. Stroud probably not going to be in this matchup. Going to be a really run-heavy game. And a lot of guys on the Chicago Bears are vying for jobs behind DeAndre Swift. So we'll see how this game type of goes. I'm expecting run-heavy, very low scoring. The over on this game kind of went up a slight bit, but I'm going with the under 16.5. It's plus money. It was under 15.5 today.
Wow, scrutiny on the Hall of Fame game. That's impressive. Today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Same-game parlays this NFL season now, including passing touchdowns and receptions on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly. 19 and over and physically located in Ontario.
Yes, Guy.
Physically located in Ontario.
Doogie going to issue his apology to the people of Forest Hill for suggesting Zach Hyman is a bubble player on the national team of Canada?
I have to be real here. I did not mean in that sense. Apologies to everybody.
Wow. Put your Twitter account up. I want to see what happens.
Lock.
Yeah.
There you go.
Put
That's
the
better,
X account up. Let's. What is it? All unrest about today's broadcast should be sent to Doogie.
Always.
Not a
And you can
chance.
throw JP in there
JP.
as well.
JP's hurt.
No.
as well.
JP's flawless. He's in an exempt
You
category
always
now.
protect JP.
That's right.
I noticed
Yes,
that.
guy.
Yeah. He's earned his stripes.
That's why.
Yeah. Did we solve anything today? I had my
I don't
neighbor on. I
think
like
so.
that.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good show. It was nice seeing you guys. Dave, nice seeing you.
Great seeing you.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do this again tomorrow.
At 4 p.m., Jim.
Yeah, we'll chat then.